Your thoughts can make you sick. You can become addicted to your own thoughts. Then the question is, if your thoughts could make you sick, can your thoughts make you well? And we're actually discovering that that's absolutely possible.
Why we need pain sometimes.
75 to 90% of every person that goes to a healthcare facility in the Western world goes in because of psychological or emotional stress. That's 8 or 9 out of 10. If my personality creates my personal reality, and my personality is made of how I think, how I act, and how I feel, if I want to create a new personal reality, a new life, I'm going to have to change my personality. And most people try to create a new reality, a new personal reality, as the same personality, and it doesn't work. We literally have to become someone else. So if you said, okay, let me not default and go unconscious to that 95% of who I am that's programmed. Let me become so conscious of the way I think. Let me become so aware of how I'm going to act today. Let me decide what emotions keep me connected to my past and bring me to a lower level of energy. Let me not go unconscious. A belief is an unconscious process. A belief is a thought you keep thinking over and over again until it's hardwired in your brain. And most beliefs are based on past experiences. And so many people have a belief about something that has to change in order for them to arrive at a new place in their life. And what we discovered a lot of times with people in this work is that when they, say for example, they were healing themselves of a health condition, sometimes they would do their meditations 3 times in one day. And I asked them, why 3 times? And they said, because I stopped believing. And when I caught myself no longer believing in it, I had to sit down and change my belief again. In other words, they had to get up believing more in their future instead of believing less in it. And they have to change their state of being to do that. So I think that that's a limitation. I also think that unconsciously we're always waiting for something out there in our life to change so that we can change or feel the relief of the lack of what we don't have. And I do think that's kind of a limited model of reality. I think when you start changing inside of you and you start seeing the changes happening outside of you, you go from being a victim in your life to being a creator of your life. And I think that when that occurs, then all of a sudden it's no longer a have to. It's something that you want to do. You actually don't want the magic to end in your life. So now you become a work in progress by investing in yourself. And when you invest in yourself, you invest in your future. So there's probably a chronic disbelief that many of us have that we're not creators of our life. And that only when we get the parking space or something good happens to us do we believe that we're the creator of our life. But imagine a world where everybody actually took responsibility in being the creator of their life and no longer the victim of their life. I think we would see a dramatic shift in consciousness. If my personality creates my personal reality, and my personality is made of how I think, how I act, and how I feel, if I want to create a new personal reality, a new life, I'm going to have to change my personality. And most people try to create a new reality, a new personal reality, as the same personality, and it doesn't work. We literally have to become someone else. So if you said, okay, let me not default and go unconscious to that 95% of who I am that's programmed. Let me become so conscious of the way I think. Let me become so aware of how I'm going to act today. Let me decide what emotions keep me connected to my past and bring me to a lower level of energy. Let me not go unconscious. And then if you said, okay, if a belief is just a thought I keep thinking over and over again, what thoughts do I want to fire and wire in my brain? And with attention, with intention, to begin to familiarize yourself with a new way of thinking. Meditation means to become familiar with. If you keep firing and wiring those circuits, you're going to begin to install the hardware. Repeat it enough times and it becomes a software program. That could be the new voice in your head that says, I can, it is possible. When we're living in survival, we experience separation. We divide in a lot of ways. And so there's biology that goes along with that, and the hormones of stress heighten the senses and cause us to become materialists. And now when we're in lack or separation, we force outcomes, we control outcomes, we compete for outcomes, we manipulate outcomes. In a lot of ways, we turn into more of a primitive self. So to change that, especially when you don't have enough money, or you just lost your job, or you just ended a relationship, or your best friend passed, it's really hard to move beyond those emotional states. And so I think that teaching people how to change those emotional states and move out of those are really important. And emotional stress and psychological stress are the ones that tend to be the most harmful. Because if it's not T-Rex that's chasing you, but it's your coworker in the next cubicle, what was once very adaptive becomes very maladaptive. And the rush of those adrenal hormones become kind of addictive to people. And they use the problems, they use the conditions in their life to reaffirm their addiction to that emotion. They need their enemy to feel hatred. And if their enemy died, they'd still feel hatred, or they'd find another one. They need the bad relationship, they need the bad job in order to feel. And that's why it's hard to change. And people become addicted to the life they don't even like. And so if you can turn on the stress response just by thought alone, by thinking about your problems, and that's the truth, you can become addicted to your own thoughts. And if the long-term effects of the hormones of stress push the genetic buttons that create disease, your thoughts can make you sick. And then the question is, if your thoughts can make you sick, can your thoughts make you well? And we're actually discovering that that's absolutely possible. So then teaching people then a little bit about how to manage their emotional state and to self-regulate, I think is a great gift for people, because when they begin to break an addiction to any emotion or the conditioning of any emotion, there's going to be cravings that go on just like any addict there, and many people overdose and many people have bad trips, and so when they start changing and the body's craving those familiar emotions, the body starts signaling the brain, of memories, or to think certain ways and to make certain choices, do certain things, crave certain experiences just to feel that same emotion. And people say, well, this feels right. No, that feels familiar. That really feels familiar. And many people will tell the story of why they feel that way based on some past experience. And it's usually not in the recent past, it's usually many years ago. In psychology, the latest research on memory shows that 50% of that story isn't even the truth. They're making it up because they don't have the same brain as they had then. And so then people are reliving a miserable life they never even had just to excuse themselves from changing. And they embellish the stories so that it sounds really hard to change. So what is that point then for a person when they say, the only person that this emotion of hatred or anger or frustration or resentment, the only person that this is hurting is me, because those chemicals are down-regulating genes and creating disease. And the person finally really realizes that, and they really decide to change. When they overcome the emotion, the memory without the emotion is called wisdom, and that's the name of the game in three-dimensional reality. Now they're ready for a new experience. It's not reliving the past. You don't need to. You don't need to talk about it. All you need to do is overcome the emotion. When you overcome the emotion, you're free from the past. You can see it from a greater level of consciousness. And that's when a person, so many times when they truly change, they'll say this. We've seen it over and over again. They reach that point where they finally break through, and some of them have had some really difficult pasts. They'll say, I would not want to change one thing in my past because it brought me to this moment. That's the moment the past no longer exists. And they can look at their betrayers and see it all had to happen for that moment. And now they're free. They no longer belong to the past, they belong to the future. What do people do when they feel an emotion? What do? They rely on something outside of them to make that emotion go away. So whether it's the masturbation or the pornography or the gambling or the shopping or the sugar or the whatever, it's all because they're trying to make that feeling go away, and they're using something outside of them. So then there is some emotion that the person is regulating. That's why they're doing that, right? So change the emotional state, and it makes sense then the need to do it diminishes. When we study belief and the change in belief, I'll answer it on two levels, Stephen. The first level is that in order for a person to change a belief or a perception about themselves and their life, the majority of those people made a decision with such firm intention that the amplitude of that decision carried a level of energy that was greater than the hardwired programs in their brain and the emotional conditioning in their body. As I said earlier, their body literally responded to their mind. The choice that they were making became a moment in time they would never forget. They'll tell you where they were, what time of day it was, who they were with when they made up their mind to change. It became a long-term memory. And the stronger the emotion we feel, the more altered we are inside of us, the more we remember that choice. That's when you said, you painted yourself into a corner and you said, this is it. I don't care how I feel, body. I don't care how long it takes, time. I don't care what people think. I don't care what's going on in my life, environment. I'm going to do this. And you made up your mind. The moment you felt that emotion, you were aligning to a new future, and to change is to be greater than your body, to be greater than your environment, and to be greater than time. And so when a person comes out of the resting state, because your body is trillions of cells, 70 trillion cells, and they're all spying on your brain. And if you were sitting there and you said, 9 out of 10 times, I'm going to fake standing up. One time, I'm actually going to stand up. Before you ever made that conscious decision, your body is so precognitive, it already knows when you're going to stand up, because it's got to release a certain amount of adrenaline, so the same volume of your blood goes to your brain. So if you're sitting on the couch with a remote control, and you got your cell phone here, and your iPad here, and your computer here, and your dog here, and your beer here, and the big TV there, and you're eating your popcorn, and you say, you know, I think I'm going to change tomorrow. What do you think your precognitive body's going to say? Relax. He's lying again. He's not willing to signal the body it's time to ride. You know, there's no signal to the body. And so making that choice to change your state of being with a clear intention and elevated emotion actually changes your state to believe in that future more than you believe in your past. Keep it up. Keep doing it. That's a big explosion in the field. That's important. It's a change in energy. And nobody changes until they change their energy. And when they change their energy, they change their life. So then you make up your mind to do that, and all of a sudden, you have that synchronicity. You have that serendipity, you have that coincidence, and all of a sudden you're saying, hey, that worked. Something I did inside of me produced an effect outside of me. I'm going to pay attention to what I did. I'm going to do it again. I try it again. Let's the experiment continue. You do it again, and then you say, well, when did I stop disbelieving? Oh my God, I stopped disbelieving when I ran into that person. We had that conversation, and oh my God, I returned back to my old belief again. Okay, next time that happens, this is what I'll do. You rehearse it in. So your evolution in your belief in self changes as well.